So the last few years have testified strong political events such as Brexit or the rise of anti-national or anti-European and nationalist political movements, for example in Italy and even in France. And these political events are rooted into the anti-migration attitudes of European natives, anti-migration attitudes that are really triggered by the fears that natives and the European citizens have for the cultural and economic impact of migrants on the destination economies. Now, if these fears should translate into votes and into more votes at national elections for anti-migration parties, the effects could be really important. And in terms of policies, for example, closing borders of European countries and of the European Union. And in turn, the economic effects, long-term effects on the economic landscape of Europe could be sizable, for example, on the labor supply. So the objective of the MALYNES research is to understand what are the key aspects that determine the voting by European citizens pro or against migrants, right? And pro or against nationalist nationalist parties. We uncover actually that the key factor is the skill of the migrants. In fact, the migration of low-skilled individuals or immigration of low-skilled individuals into European countries induces European citizens to vote for parties that express very conservative views and nationalist views. But we also find that low-skilled migration induces European citizens to vote much less for parties that propose more redistributive policies, for example, a welfare state expansion, and induce parties themselves to propose platforms that reduce the welfare state. Why is this the case? Well, simply because migrants are perceived as net receivers from the welfare state, so people that in a sense displace natives from the consumption of schools, of the welfare systems, of the health system and so on. So actually natives don't want to be displaced or fear to be displaced. This is not the case for high-skilled migrants. Right? We find that high-skilled migration induces natives to vote for more open views, for more open, for parties that express more open views, and for parties that are more open to redistributive policies. So this is difficult to say because there are many factors behind that. However, we have to recognize that populist parties deal and focus on social issues, important social issues, such as the increasing inequalities, the performance of low-wage workers, and economic stagnation in European countries. And to these social issues, they propose a very simple and easy-to-communicate solution. That is basically closing borders and impeding migration. And in doing that, they point to migrants as the, if not the sole, but the principal cause of lack of economic cohesion in European society. So in a sense, the key of their success is that they propose a very simple solution to a very complex problem. This is a sort of propaganda that on the one hand triggers the fears of natives against migration, and on the other hand gains these parties a lot of political consensus. In the research with Giovanni Peri and Riccardo Turati, we propose a hypothetical scenario where low-skilled migration into the European Union is completely restricted, kind of completely forbidden. And we show that in this hypothetical scenario, openly provocative scenario, the support for nationalist parties completely disappears. What does this mean? This means that, in a sense, if these parties are aware of this effect, and I'm sure they are, and if they are somewhat concerned about their re-election probabilities, and I'm sure they are, it is very unlikely that they would really aim at restricting low-skilled migration, because they would know that they would totally lose political consensus and they would not be re-elected at national elections. So, in a sense, their commitment to to truly restrict migration are not credible, in my view. What would they like to do then? Well, they might implement alternative policies that does not lose them the political consensus, such as I said before, policies that reduce the amount of redistribution, welfare redistribution to migrants, that restrict access to the welfare state, to public amenities such as schools or hospitals or any form of social assistance. These policies would have the ultimate effect to worsen the migrants' living conditions. Of course, there is no perfect solution. Something that emerged from our research is that the skill content of migration is really important. More specifically, one way to improve both the economic conditions and the views that natives have regarding migration is to allow a balanced inflow of low-skilled and high-skilled migrants. Informing individuals and informing natives, communicating effectively to natives is also very important regarding the contribution that migrants can give to the destination society from an economic and even a demographic perspective. As I said before, low-skilled migrants are very often perceived as a liability to the destination countries in many dimensions, while there is a research in economics and political sciences that shows that the contribution of migrants to the destination country can be very, very important. Finally, something that also emerges from our research is that fostering or favoring contacts between migrants and natives can be a key ingredient to allow natives to understand that migrants are not a threat to their society. This is far from being only theory, because there are effective policies and effective examples that show how fruitful can be such a contact. For example, the welcoming policies of refugees implemented by the mayor of the Belgian town of Mechelen, Bart Somers, who actually designed a program of mentorship by natives of refugees that are welcomed in the town. Actually, the way this program works is to take, for each refugee, assign a native and a local mentor, typically taken among those people that have more time to dedicate, for example, like retired people, who are most often the persons that have the highest prejudice against migrants. And these mentors are asked to introduce the refugee, introduce the guest to the local social and economic life of the town. And actually, this welcoming policy has been very fruitful in terms of improving the social cohesion within the town, the quality of human and social relationship within the local context.